Hey, everybody listening online or on YouTube, on podcast. Full disclosure, I forgot to hit record at the start of the Ash Wednesday service or at the start of my sermon on Ash Wednesday. And so I missed recording the first few minutes of the sermon at the actual service. So I re-recorded that later and then added it to what I preached Wednesday night. So you might notice a little bit of difference in audio as it shifts from one to the other. It happened real early on that I caught it and got it going right. You might notice a difference in audio. And if you were there and heard it live, what you're hearing on the recording is going to be a little bit different in the beginning because I preached from an outline and not a manuscript, but it's very close. And I hope it won't be too distracting when the shift comes. Thanks a lot. I hope this is a meaningful message for you. Tonight is Ash Wednesday, and tonight we begin our series on Lent that I'm calling The Cost of Love, The Pain of Loss, and The Gift of Lament. We're going to deal with each of those themes in turn, although they're really related, and that theme of lament is the thread that ties all three together. So tonight, we're talking about the cost of love. And let's make no mistake about it, love is not free. Now, that's not entirely true. There is a sense in which love is free. Receiving love, particularly love that we receive from God as a gift from God, that is a gift. It's a free gift. There's no strings attached. God gives love without demanding or requiring any response from us. We saw this in Jesus' life over and over and over again. Jesus healed people who were sick. He cast demons out of folks. He raised the dead. He cured the lame. He fed thousands of people. He healed strangers near and far. And he did all of that. He did all of that without demanding anything in return. He didn't even demand that people say thank you. I mean, he appreciated a thank you when he got one, but he didn't demand a thank you. His love was a gift. It was a free gift, no strings attached. Paul summed it up this way when he said, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus gave us that ultimate gift of love without demanding or requiring anything in return. So there is definitely a sense in which love is a free gift, but there's also a very important sense in which love is not free, where there is a very real cost to love. And that's when we move from being a recipient of love to a giver of love. When we start to love like Jesus loved, or if we commit or decide that we want to begin loving the way Jesus loved, there is a cost to that. It's a very, very real cost, and many folks just aren't willing to pay it. Now, we'd like to get a little discount on it. Wilbur Reese, who was a Baptist pastor years and years ago, wrote years and years ago a little devotional called $3 Worth of God. I read it a while back. I loved it, and I want to share it with you here tonight. It goes like this. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a warm cup of milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough of God to make me love someone who's different from me or welcome a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want the warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. $3 worth of God. So much of the church wants $3 worth of God. You see it a lot in the prosperity gospel churches where follow God and lead your best life now. Have your best friends, have the wealth that you've always wanted, the success in work and the success in life and success in relationships and $3 worth of God, enough to make us warm and comfortable and cozy, but not enough to really cost us. That's not the kind of love Jesus talked about. That's not the kind of love that he demonstrated. When Jesus talked about love, when he talked about loving people, he said things like this: if you want to follow me, deny yourself, take up your cross every day, and follow me. That's what it looks like. See, laying down our lives, Jesus said to his disciples, no greater love has anyone than this, that they lay down one's life for one's friends. That's the greatest love. But laying down our lives is not necessarily dying for someone. Most of us don't get the opportunity to take a bullet for someone. Most of us don't get the opportunity to push someone else out from in front of the speeding train and get hit ourselves. Most of us don't get that chance. But he didn't say, greater love has no one than this, than they give up their life for their friends, but that they lay down their life for their friends. And laying down our lives is something that we all have the capacity and the opportunity to do. Laying down our lives means putting others' needs ahead of our own. It means sacrificing our privilege, our wealth, our possessions, our power, our position to raise others up, to encourage them, to build them up, to strengthen them. It's the way Jesus lived his life on a daily basis, was laying it down. People in Jesus' day who were taking up their cross, it wasn't a pretty thing. We have pretty crosses. Pretty crosses are great. They remind us of how God can take even the worst of human creations, such as a cross, and make it into something beautiful. But it wasn't at all beautiful to anyone in Jesus' day. It was a symbol of torture, pain, death, and oppression that could not be escaped from. If you took up your cross, you were on your way to die. If you took up your cross, you had no more plans, you had no more dreams, you had no more expectations, except perhaps to die quickly rather than slowly. And the hope, if you had any hope at all, was in the resurrection. That's what it meant to take up your cross, to deny yourself, to say, my plans are going to be secondary to your plans. My hopes are going to be secondary to your hopes. My dreams will be secondary to your dreams. We're going to talk about all of this. And I do have to say a word of not a caution, but a disclaimer here. Jesus was always talking about this, doing it freely as an act of the will, a choice. Some folks live that way in a compulsive way, always giving up themselves for another out of an internal compulsion that they feel like, I have to do this in order to be accepted, in order to be loved, in order to be a good person. I'm not worthy to have my own dreams or my own hopes or my own expectations met, and I have to do this for another. That's a kind of compulsion that is a self-destructive form, variation of what Jesus was talking about. Jesus had no compulsion to do what he did. Jesus chose to do what he did. He was perfectly free to not come to earth at all. He was perfectly free to bring a legion of angels with him. He was perfectly free to wipe out Herod, to wipe out Pontius Pilate, to wipe out the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the priesthood. He was perfectly free to do that. He just chose not to do it. He wasn't OCD. He was deliberate. He was intentional. And that's what Jesus invites us into. That kind of deliberate intentionality. I think the greatest literary example of this kind of living is Jean Valjean, the main character in Victor Hugo's book, Les Miserables. The musical is great. The movies are great. They're all incredible. I still think one of the best few minutes of cinema ever is when Anne Hathaway, who plays Fantine in the most recent movie version of Les Miserables, sings The Dream I Dream. Incredible. Go on YouTube, watch it tonight. It's a great lament. Valjean had grown up in poverty. In desperation because of the poverty, to help feed his family, he broke a window in a bakery and stole a loaf of bread. He was caught and sentenced to 5 years of hard labor. Prison turned him into a real criminal. He killed a man in prison in self-defense and in rage. When he was paroled then, after another 10 years had been added on to his sentence, he was condemned to live a life as an ex-con, unable to get a job anywhere, unable to get shelter anywhere. He was welcomed by a bishop who showed him a life-changing moment of grace, gifting to him what for Valjean was great wealth. But for Valjean to receive that gift, that the bishop gave that gift freely to him. And he said to him, I'm using this to buy your soul. It cost the bishop something. It was the last possessions he had that had any real earthly value. And he gave them to Valjean and he said, today I purchase your soul for God. And Valjean could have received that gift with no strings attached and done nothing with it but make himself feel good for as long as it lasted. But instead, he laid down his life. He gave up the person he had been and became another person entirely, a person who lived for the sake of others, rather than protecting himself, protecting others, rather than preserving his own life, building up the lives of others, rather than selfishly grabbing as much as he could get for himself, generously giving away as much as he could. He established a very successful business. He became the mayor of a town. He was loved and respected because of his kindness, his graciousness, his generosity, until he heard that another man had been captured and was going to be sentenced to a life of hard labor because they thought that other man was Jean Valjean, the parolee who had broken parole. And Valjean had a choice. At that moment, he had a choice. He could let that other man be convicted and sentenced as Jean Valjean, and his cover would be secure for the rest of his life because the public record has Jean Valjean back in prison. Or he could go forward and say, you can't send that man to prison. He's not Jean Valjean. I'm Jean Valjean. It would require him to give up all of his wealth. Well, most of it. Certainly his position and his power and his respect and his dignity in the community. It would cause him to live the rest of his life on the run. But that's what he did. In that moment, when he was making that decision, and it wasn't an easy decision, it took him days and days and days to reach the decision, and he agonized over it. But ultimately, he decided that he had been given the gift of life, not so that he could protect that gift and protect his life, but so that he could lay down his life for others. And it would be a betrayal of the gift given to him by the bishop if he didn't give that same gift away to this other poor man who was about to be sent to prison. And so he laid down his life for a man who was a friend only, you'd have to stretch the definition of the word very far. He'd never met him before the trial when he went to confess that he was indeed Jean Valjean. Laying down our lives doesn't mean taking a bullet for someone most of the time. It means using all that we have been given to build up and encourage others. Now, the rules, good rules of public speaking, tell me a few things. I'm going to break 3 rules of public speaking in one sermon here. I'm warning you up front because, well, that's one of the rules I'm breaking, but I'm warning you up front so you know what's going on. One of the rules is if you use a fictional example, you should follow that with a real-life example. I'm not. I'm following it with an even more fictional example. It's a story about a bunny that can talk. It's about as fictional as you get. The second thing, third thing, the way that I'm breaking the rules is I'm going to give you, I never do this with stories, almost never do this with stories, but I'm going to give a bit of a spoiler up front because the story is about a really cute bunny, but I want you to know going in that this story fits perfectly with the theme of the message in Lent, okay? Fair warning. The story, it's one of 3 stories that I'm going to tell. I'll tell the second one at our Maundy Thursday service and the third one at Good Friday service. All 3 from a book by Martin Bell called The Way of the Wolf. And the first story is the story of Barrington Bunny. It's the story that he uses to open the whole book, The Way of the Wolf. Barrington, in this book, is a very furry bunny. He's got one lop ear, beady black eyes, and a pointy black nose. And he loves to hop. And he hops a lot. Hop, hop, hippity hop through the forest. And it's wintertime when the story takes place. And for most bunnies, wintertime is the best time of the year because they can hop. And like I said, he's furry, and that makes him very warm. He's very furry and warm. And so the snow doesn't bother him. And when it snows, they like to hop through the snow. Then they can look around over their shoulder and see where they've hopped. At least Barrington loves to do that. He's not really sure whether other bunnies are the same, because as far as Barrington knows, he's the only bunny in the forest. So winter's been going on. There's a lot of snow on the ground. And at last, it's Christmas Eve, which for most of the animals is a time of great joy and great celebration. They gather with their families to celebrate Christmas. They love it. They have a great time. They have parties and dinners and feasts, and it's all wonderful, except for Barrington, because he's got no family. And so he has to spend Christmas alone. So Christmas Eve, he goes to his favorite spot in the whole forest, the clearing at the center of the forest. It's been snowing for a couple of days. It's thick and fluffy on the ground, and he's going to go to the clearing, and he looks and he sees it's pristine, not a track out there, and he says, "It's all mine." And he starts hopping through the clearing. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Hop, hop, hippity hop. And he stops occasionally and looks over his shoulder to see the designs he's made in the snow. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Hop, hop, hippity hop. All through Christmas Eve until the sun starts to go down. And Barrington decides he better go home before it gets dark. And so he hops off towards his home. Hop, hop, hippity hop. And as he's passing beneath a particularly large oak tree, he hears a lot of noise way up in the tree. And he stops and he listens, and he kind of flops up the one ear that flops down so he can hear better. And sure enough, it's a party. He can hear the voices way up there. And he hollers out, "Hello up there." And a voice from up there hollers down, "Hello down there." And then Barrington said, "Who's up there?" And the up there voice said, "We're the squirrel family. Who's down there?" And Barrington said, "It's Barrington, the bunny." And the squirrel says, "Merry Christmas, Barrington." And Barrington says, "Merry Christmas, squirrel." And then Barrington took a lot of courage to do it. But before he hops away, he said, "Can I come to your house for Christmas?" And the squirrel says, "Sure, Barrington, come on up. Can you climb trees?" "No, but I'm very furry and warm and I can hop." The squirrel says, "Wow, that sounds great, but to come to our house, you have to be able to climb trees. Sorry, Barrington. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas." And he heads on toward home. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Hop, hop, hippity hop. To get home, he has to pass right near the lake. And when he gets to the lake, he sees the little pile of wood out about 20 yards from the shore. It's the beaver's house. And he pauses on the bank, and sure enough, he can hear a party going on at Beaver's house too. And so Barrington hollers out, "Hello, Beaver!" And it takes a while. But eventually there's some bubbles, and a little brown head pops out of the water right near the shore, and it's the beaver, and he says, "Hey, Barrington, Merry Christmas." And Barrington says, "Merry Christmas, Beaver." And Barrington says, "Are you all having a party at your house?" And Beaver says, "We sure are. Family came in from all over the forest. It's the best party we've had in a long time." And Barrington said, "Can I come to your party?" And the beaver said, "We'd love to have you at the party, Barrington. Can you swim?" Barrington says, "No, I can't swim, but I can hop, and I'm very furry and warm." Beaver says, "You got to be able to swim to come to our house." Barrington says, "Okay. Well, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Barrington." Barrington hops away. Hop, hop, hippity hop. It's really dark by now. Snow started to fall again, and the wind's starting to pick up. And Barrington shivers a little bit, but just a little bit. And that's more from sadness than cold. After all, he can hop, and he's very furry and warm. But now he's also feeling more lonely than he's ever felt before. And just before he gets home, he hears it. It's another party. But this is little tiny voices, not way up in a tree, not way out in the lake, but down in the ground. And he realized he's right beside the mouse family's house. It's a family of field mice. They live under the ground, right there on the way to Barrington's house. And he calls out, "Hello, field mice. Hello, field mice. Can I come to your house for Christmas?" But the wind's blowing so hard, and they're having such a good time that they don't even hear him. So Barrington just sits down in the snow and starts to cry. "I'm a bunny," he says. "Bunnies are useless. We're not good for anything, and we're not good for anybody." He sits there and he cries and he chews on his foot, and it gets darker and the snow's falling harder, and then suddenly Barrington is aware that he is not alone. There's someone else there in the forest near him, and very slowly and very carefully, Barrington looks up, and there, just a few feet away, is a massive silver wolf. He's got fire in his eyes, and he's looking at Barrington. Barrington's looking back. Barrington's wondering, should I run? Should I play dead? What should I do? And he just sits there as still as can be. And at last, the wolf speaks. And he says, "Barrington, why are you crying on Christmas Eve?" Barrington forgets all about the fact that he's a wolf, and he starts crying again. He says, "Because I'm a bunny and I'm useless. All we can do is nothing, because I got no family. I'm all alone on Christmas Eve. It's not fair." And the wolf looks at him and says, "Barrington, bunnies are not useless. Bunnies can hop, and they're very furry and warm. That's a gift, Barrington, a free gift, no strings attached." Barrington says, "Well, yeah, but what good is that if I'm alone? I don't have any family, and it's Christmas Eve." And the wolf said, "Barrington, every animal in the forest is a member of your family." And that made Barrington think. And he looked down, and he looked back up, and the wolf was gone. And Barrington thought, "I'm a bunny. I can hop, and I'm very furry and warm. That's a gift, a free gift, no strings attached." And he started hopping, a little more spring in his step. And then he thought, every animal in the forest is a member of my family. And then he had an idea. And he went scampering back toward the lake, and along the way, he dug under the snow until he found the best stick he could find. And he carried that to the edge of the lake, and he left it there with a note that said, "Merry Christmas to the beavers from a member of your family." Barrington was feeling pretty good about himself. And he had another idea, and he thought, I got to go to the squirrel's house. So he went through the forest, hop, hop, hippity, hop, 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 hippity, hop. And the snow was really falling now, and the wind was really blowing, and it was starting to get cold, but Barrington was determined. And he dug way down through the snow until he found some dry twigs and dry leaves and dry grass, and he bundled a whole bunch of it up, and he carried it over to the base of the squirrel's tree, and he left it there with a note that said, "Merry Christmas to the squirrels from a member of your family." Barrington felt pretty good about that. But now the wind was blowing so hard, and the snow was falling so thick, and it was getting so cold that Barrington shivered from the cold, and he said, "I know I can hop, and I'm furry and warm, but if I don't get home soon, even I'm going to freeze in this." And so Barrington headed back to his house. Hop, hop, hippity, hop. Hop, hop, hippity, hop. But then Barrington realized that he was lost. He couldn't see, he couldn't hear, and he couldn't feel anything except the driving, bitter cold. And he was wondering what he was going to do, stopped and waited and thought until he heard it. Squeak, 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 squeak. Barrington went toward the sound. Squeak, 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 squeak. And there, shivering in the snow, was a little baby field mouse. Barrington said, "Hey, little guy, what's wrong?" And the field mouse said, "I'm lost and I can't get home and I'm going to freeze to death." And Barrington said, "You don't have to worry about that. I'm a bunny and I'm very furry and warm. And Barrington crawled right over top of the little field mouse and nestled right down on top of him. And the field mouse, he cried for a little while, but soon he was snug and warm under Barrington's body, and he fell fast asleep. And as Barrington sat there, he had two thoughts. One is, bunnies can hop, and they're very furry and warm. And that's a gift, a free gift. And then as he felt the heartbeat of that little mouse against his chest, he thought, every animal in the forest is a member of my family. The next morning, the field mice family, they were so happy to see their little baby alive again that they didn't even notice the frozen carcass of the dead bunny rabbit that he crawled out from under. And the beaver family never did figure out which member of the family left them that stick. And the squirrels never figured out who in their family left them that bundle of sticks and twigs and leaves. In fact, no one in the forest even noticed that Barrington was gone, except the wolf. He noticed. He came and he sat beside Barrington all Christmas Day and into the night, and then he left. I think that's one of the best pictures I have ever read or heard or seen anywhere of what it means to lay down your life for your friends. Just doing the stuff we can do, using what we have to serve and bless and love other folks. And this business of friendship, when Jesus looks at his disciples and says, you're no longer my servants, you're my friends, that's huge. And it's easy for us to miss it because we use that word so casually these days. 1,000 people on Facebook who I barely ever talk to are my friends. That's not how that word was used in Jesus' day. There were 4 words for love in the Greek language. There was storge, which is sort of an affection. There was eros, which is erotic love. There was agape, which is the kind of love that Paul talked about in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't envy, love doesn't boast, those kinds of things. And the 4th word was philios, which means friendship. In the Christian tradition, we have elevated agape as the highest form of love. In the Greco-Roman world, friendship was the highest form of love. There was no greater love that you would have for anyone than to call them your friend. It implied a covenant of mutual responsibility, a covenant of loyalty. It was deep, it was abiding, it was passionate, it was sacrificial. It was the kind of love you didn't call someone your friend unless you were going to die, willing to die for them. Unless you were willing to lay down your life for them, unless you were willing to welcome them and receive them under any circumstance and any condition. And Jesus said to his disciples, you're not my servants, you're my friends. You're my friends. And there is a cost to love. It's a cost of our life. Love will cost us our lives. But there's a reward for love too. Not a reward in the sense of a payout. It's not an exchange, but it's, it's the good that comes back when we love. And the good that comes back when we love, this kind of love that Jesus talked about, of denying yourself, taking up your cross, laying down your life for those you love, the reward that comes back is blessed community, a community of friendship. It's not being alone in life. Jesus could have lived a solitary life as a solitary hero. When Superman came to save the planet, he lived in a fortress of solitude, right? When Jesus came to save the universe, he lived among the people. He gave himself up. Superman couldn't be killed. Jesus allowed himself to be killed. I don't have anything against Superman. I'm just saying there's a lot of different ways to save the world. And Jesus chose to love. Jesus chose to have friends. and it cost him his life. You're my friends. I will lay down my life for you. So there's a cost to love. There's a reward for love. But with that cost, what do we do with the pain? Because the pain is real. The cost is real. The heartache is real. The hurt is real. And we're going to talk about a lot of different ways that love causes us, without exception, without fail, and by necessity, simply by the very nature of what love is. We're going to talk about a lot of the ways that love hurts. And no, I'm not going to sing the Nazareth song. Yes, you can thank God for that later. What do we do with the pain? That brings us to the gift of lament. God has given us lament as a gift. Lament is what we can do with the pain that comes from loving others. Lament is what we can do with the hurt, with the anger toward God, with the anger toward injustice, with the anger toward suffering, disease, death, all of these things that when we love other people and they go through it or we go through it, our hearts break. What we do with that pain, what we do with that anger, God says, is lament. And part of lament is giving it all back to God. Not in sort of a namby-pamby, silly way where we just pretend then that it's all okay. Well, I lamented, now I feel better. That's not how lament works. Lament isn't a way to avoid pain, and it's not a way out of the pain. It's a way to live in and eventually through the pain and the heartache. And part of lament is giving it back to God. One of the things we're so not comfortable with doing in the church is being angry with God and telling God, this is your fault. When you really read so many of the laments throughout the Scripture, Job, some of the ones in the Psalms, and Jeremiah, it's God did this to us. God, you did this to us. God's a big boy. He can take our anger. Trust me. There's nothing we can say to God that's going to hurt his feelings or make him go home and sulk. All right? We can say to God, God, my suffering, my friend's suffering, you could take it away in a heartbeat, but you don't. This is on you, God. We give it to God. That's part of it. And the other end of it, there's some things in the middle. We'll get to those too. The other end of it is hope. The hope that one day Jesus will come. He will establish his kingdom. He will wipe away every tear. He will make all things right. We just don't know how long that's going to be. But we have the hope. We have the hope that one day God will make it all right. That's the hope. So tonight, we got a veritable smorgasbord of worship here tonight. You've got paper, you've got pencil. I'm going to play a song in a minute, and while that song is playing, I want you to write down something on that paper that is lamentish. Something that you're hurting. Something that's hurting you. Something that's hurting someone you love. Some situation, some circumstance. Maybe it's more general than that, and it's war, it's poverty, it's addiction. But when you look at it, your blood boils or your heart breaks. And maybe it's happening to you, maybe it's happening to someone you love, maybe it's happening in the community, the country, the world, whatever it is. And we try not to dwell on it, because when you dwell on it, you get too sad or you get too angry and you don't want to feel. I want you to write it down. And when you bring it up, I want you to put it in the offering plate. I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to read any of these. Going to save them till Good Friday. They're going to come back then. We're still not going to read them. Privacy guarantee. Not going to look at any of them. But we're not taking up a money offering tonight. Tonight, our offering to God is our lamentations.